Hey everybody, welcome to episode 12 of The Stare Down. I am Mallory, your host, and this week's episode is Mal Takes on the Big Apple and Big Blue. I can't wait to recap you on most things that happened in New York. Obviously, some things have got to stay there, but you know the drill. If you're ready, it's time to sit back, relax, grab a drink or two, and let's start the stare down, y'all. Awesome. So thank you so much for joining me on episode 12. Just want to give a quick shout out to Megan and Mallory for joining me for episode 11, the M Cubed Network. That one was so much fun. I've gotten a lot of great feedback on it. So I said it a couple of times that episode, but you'll definitely be hearing from them in the future. It's definitely not the last time they're going to be on. So thanks again, ladies. All right, now let's just jump right on into it. So I went to New York City this past weekend, left on Friday, came back on Monday, and had, honestly, the trip of a lifetime. That city, there is something about it. It's only my second time going, but I absolutely love it. I love the noise. I love the buildings. I love watching all of the people live within their areas and their blocks and just living their lives. It's just such a cool vibe. It's definitely a place that gets in your heart and worms its little way in, as a friend said. So I went up there to watch my first ever Giants game. I'm pretty much a huge Giants fan. Actually, I'm not pretty much a huge Giants fan. I am a huge Giants fan. And so after I visited last year, my friends Abigail and Paris and I all started talking about having a weekend and trying to go to a Giants game since I'd never been. And so we just finally decided to make it happen. So it was great. I'll talk about the game in a little bit, but I think Paris laughed so hard at me when we stepped off the train and we saw MetLife. And as I jumped up and down and kind of squealed a little bit, I turned to her and I was like, I feel like I'm having my Rudy moment. This is the most beautiful sight these eyes have ever seen. And she just died laughing, but it was. And it's so weird to me because thinking back on it, like I've seen other NFL stadiums, but there was something about MetLife, even like getting off the train and seeing the sign that said like the Meadowlands, like that's like classic NFL. Like that's what you watch on Sundays. It's not the same to me in Nashville. I mean, no offense to the Titans, no offense to the Falcons, even in Atlanta, or the Saints in New Orleans. It's definitely its own brand of football in the South, but there is something about the NFL in like New York City, or I even imagine Philadelphia or Green Bay. Those places, like I feel like that is classic NFL. So had a blast. We decided we were going to wait until right before kickoff and see if we could get seats because even though it wasn't a sellout, y'all, those tickets aren't cheap. They were crazy expensive, and that's even sitting in like the 300 level, like all the way up. So about 30 minutes before kickoff, I was like, screw it. I can't wait anymore. I've got to have a ticket. Like it's going to drive me nuts. So I opened up Vivid Seats, and right there, the second listing was in the 100 sections, and it was row 35, seats 3, 4, 5, and 6 for less than $100 a seat before taxes and fees, obviously. I don't think we could press like buy fast enough. They were incredible, y'all. Those seats were insane. It was like you walked in and you just had like a straight just shot of the field, like right out in front of you. You could see everything. You weren't too high. You weren't super close to where you couldn't see things because of things, maybe blocking it on the field. We weren't necessarily in like a corner of the end zone, but we were a little bit to the upright of the field goal post. So got to see just some incredible football. I got to see a missed field goal attempt. Actually, like on the field goal, on the post that we were sitting at, which was kind of awesome because you see it all the time on TV, but it's so different in person. I got to see Saquon, which, y'all, that boy can run, and he can run hard. And it was a little weird because he did like hyperextend his elbow. And so I was like, crap, well, guess I've got to see him for like one drive and then he's done. But he wasn't. So got to see him score a touchdown eventually, which was awesome. And then got to see just really kind of a good defensive battle. And I absolutely love that because, I mean, it's Commanders and Giants, right? So you're talking NFC East rivalry. It was the throwback game for the Giants. So it was the old Giants logo that literally spells out Giants in all like capital letters with like the white line beneath it and that like really super dark navy. Oh, it was beautiful. Like that's probably one of my favorite logos that they've ever had. And so to get to see that like painted on the middle of the field, being there in that atmosphere and like, hearing all the chants of let's go defense and like, come on, Big Blue, like just getting to yell at the top of my lungs for this team. Like it was so much fun. I don't know that I could have asked for a better experience for my first game, like at the Giants home stadium, which that's a little weird to me because, this week they play the Jets and they share MetLife Stadium. And I asked, I was like, how does that work? Because you have season ticket holders for the Giants and for the Jets. And so I found out, Jets season ticket holders will be allowed to sit in their seats because the Jets are the home team. So if a Giants fan wants to go, they'll have to buy a ticket like they would if they were going to a visiting team's stadium. And that's got to be weird, right? Like you're sitting in my seat, but they're really not. I don't know. Like I don't know that I necessarily love the idea of like sharing stadiums, but I do think it makes for some interesting rivalries when they do play each other. So I thought that was kind of cool. But, the way the game ended, the Giants stopped them on fourth down. And I mean, y'all, it was like, I was like, I'm so nervous. I can't watch. Like, what's happening? I couldn't, like, I was just so nervous. And all I could do was stand up and scream. And they stopped them. Is great. Actually got down. The Commanders had used all of their timeouts in the third quarter. And so when the Giants got the ball back, they were taking a knee, but it wasn't, the Commanders had used all of their timeouts to stop the clock so that there was a possibility they could get the ball back and try and tie it up at that point. But right at the last point, on the last play before the Giants were going to have to punt, the Commanders did have a player go down with an injury. And so because of that, and they didn't have any timeouts, they got the 10-second runoff. So it went from 50 seconds to 40 seconds, and therefore the game was over. And so it was just like, the ref comes out and was like, there's a 10-second runoff, clock goes to 40, therefore the game is over. And that was it. They walk out to midfield, they shake hands, and everybody goes along their own way. And it was just like, oh, okay, we go home now. Like, that was so weird. Like, it was so almost like anticlimactic for like how intense and insane the crowd had been the entire game, and how much they had been into it to just be like, well, we're done. Congrats, you won. And then they just walk off. That was awesome to see just that kind of weirdness and see how different it is. And in college, like you get to kind of burn that like energy back off. Like we'll go back and we'll tailgate. You've got to walk to your car and all of that. But it was like walking back to the train, which I believe the majority of people were taking. It was insanely crowded. It was just like, okay. And they were talking, and you hear all of these conversations. And the one that we actually had kind of walking back was, Tyrod Taylor played really, really well. And I think it's kind of interesting. So shout out to Paris's boyfriend, Tim, for this, because I'm glad he mentioned it to her. It definitely needs to be a topic today. And that's, if you're Daniel Jones and you just got this huge contract and now you're hurt and your backup is in there for you, but he's doing better than you were, how's that going to feel when you're making all that money and knowing you got benched? Now maybe you'll know how Eli felt, was kind of my response. Not that, really means anything, but I've always kind of joked that, like, what penance do the Giants need to pay to, like, get over the hump of them doing that to Eli? Like, there's some kind of penance that we're going to have to pay, and maybe this is it, honestly. Like, maybe this is it, but, both defenses played great. I did see some things out of the Giants offense that made me feel a little bit better. Didn't make me feel great. Saquon did fumble. I didn't really from the replay, I didn't actually see it. I didn't think it was a fumble. I didn't feel like there was irrefutable evidence to say that it was a fumble, but they saw something I didn't see. And again, they can break it down frame by frame. Here I am. I'm just one little person in this humongous, ginormous stadium. So that was kind of interesting to see. The other thing too that I think I noticed was so different was the punting. Y'all, the punting in the NFL is crazy. Those things were like bullets going through the air. They were so tight and fast, and just they went up so high. I just was so impressed with the punters. I know that's not really something you probably want to be impressed with, but it was just so cool to me to see that and to see just what that difference is between, college and NFL and that kind of level. Everybody jokes like, oh, there are probably teams that, the best Bama team in history the past, 10 years, take a Bama team and they probably could have beat the worst team in the NFL. But I don't necessarily agree with that, because you have guys who are doing this professionally. And yeah, you can always make the point that now college is definitely more like professional football, but there's just such a different level to it. But super fun. Cannot believe I've waited this long to go. Cannot wait to go back. Going to try next time and pick a game in a month where maybe it's not as cold or doesn't have the possibility to be as cold. The weather was in the 60s, so not horrible, actually kind of perfect for a fall day. But y'all, the wind gusts were like 30 to 40 miles an hour, and it was cold. And so Paris, you're a trooper for sticking through it, because I know you don't like to be cold. So thank you for that. Abigail, thanks for letting us crash there. Rob, thanks for tagging along with the 3 crazy Bama girls who wanted to go to a Giants game. But yeah, super, super fun time. Cannot wait to go back. So that's my New York Giants experience. Obviously, that's not the only thing I'm going to talk about in terms of New York City. I want to back up to that Saturday. We went and watched Alabama, Tennessee at Printer's Alley in New York. That is the official Tennessee bar. Holy orange, y'all. They were everywhere. It was so impressive. I had on my Ole Miss jersey. Paris had on her Alabama jersey. There was someone in a Georgia shirt, a Penn State shirt, an Ohio State shirt, and I think that was it. The rest of that bar was packed, and I mean packed, and it was orange. It was crazy. So much fun though, especially they were losing their minds in the first half, and they had every right to, right? Like Bama did not play well in that first half, and Tennessee came out like ready to make a statement and show that last year wasn't a fluke. They calmed down a little bit in the second half as Bama kind of got some momentum going. But yeah, shout out to Printer's Alley and all of the Tennessee fans. Everyone was super nice to me. Things were obviously said to Paris because she is wearing an Alabama jersey in a Tennessee bar while they're playing Alabama. So, but like nothing crazy was said to her. It was just everybody was there to have a good time, watch the game, and just like cheer for Tennessee. They played Dixieland Delight a bunch of times, but definitely not as many times as they played Rocky Top. At first, I sat there, like when I first got there, and I just sat there and I was like, y'all, what in the world? And I think I was just shocked because I never expected it to be like that. Like I never expected it to be that full, but it was. I expected it to be more like what the Ole Miss bar experience was that we actually ended up dealing with later on that night, where, yeah, there's a smattering of fans. Nobody was really cheering. I was obviously the crazy visiting Ole Miss fan. I made them do like 800 hottie toddies, and by like the last one, they just all kind of sat there and let me scream my head off. Whatever. We won. That's all that mattered. But that's kind of more what I expected it to be. Just, very, little bit more low key, but no, not Printer's Alley. Hats off to y'all. Probably one of the best atmospheres for college football that I've ever been to outside of the actual game. So I thought that was really cool. And yeah, New York, man, you just got my heart. I walked a lot on Saturday. I got to see some things I didn't get to see last year. Wearing my Ole Miss jersey, I got a couple of hottie toddies. That was super cool. Again, things you don't think you're going to hear. Had a guy tell me, like, with some words that I'm not going to repeat because I would have to change this episode from clean to explicit, and I just don't really feel like doing that. But basically, he told me, he's like, hey, I put money on Ole Miss on the over. Do you think that was a good bet? And, I'm just high on life at that point and loving the crisp fall air. And I was like, yeah, great bet. Hottie toddy. And then I got a hottie MFing toddy back from him. And I'm glad I told him that. And I'm glad that I was as confident at that point because the line was 6.5 and we won by 7. So to the dude who put $200 on Ole Miss going over, I really hope that the line didn't move and you lost money. But hopefully it just stayed at 6.5 and you were good. But yeah, love New York. Cannot wait to go back. Definitely want to go back for some more games. So yeah, it was fun. It was so much fun. Yeah, I think that's all I can say for right now. I'm gonna put some pictures and stuff up on the blog, so go check those out. You'll definitely have to enjoy the ones of me in front of MetLife Stadium. One of me reenacting the night before when we went to Hoboken and to a bar. And I think I said it last week on the podcast. I was like, look, the city that never sleeps, but this girl is going to have to sleep because I'm definitely closer to 40 than I would like. Yeah, totally was falling asleep in the bar. Y'all, those people go hard. They go real hard. So it was fun times, but I'll post that for y'all to laugh and just hopefully get to see me living life and loving life. So, all right, enough about me. Let's talk about the craziest story in college football that I definitely didn't have this on my bingo card. I'm finding out that apparently some people in the Big Ten did, but I'm not in the Big Ten, so I don't know. So obviously, if you haven't heard by now, you've probably been living under a rock or you just don't pay attention to college football. But there's a low-level staff member named Connor Stallions. He works for Michigan as an analyst, and he is currently suspended with pay for leading an elaborate, I can't even believe I'm having to say this, an elaborate system of scouting and sign stealing. Okay, so let's back this up because I feel like this is a little deja vu. Like, did we not learn anything from the Patriots and Spygate, guys? Like, did we not? And this was before, like, Spygate was way before, like, TikTok and Instagram Reels and those things were, like, so popular where you could see everything, right? But, like, there is a reason that the NCAA is like, yeah, okay, if you get signs and stuff and you pick up on patterns from watching film, that's one thing. It is a totally different thing to go to your opponent's stadium and film them during their game in which you are not playing them and then break down that film because you're literally like focusing on them. That's what this kid apparently did. And it's crazy. It's crazy. And here's the thing. Michigan didn't need this because, Harbaugh and his whole thing where he had to serve, where it was a self-imposed serving of a 3-game suspension at the beginning of the year for the COVID-19 recruiting violations during the dead period. They already have that. The NCAA kind of put that on the back burner and said, yeah, we'll deal with it later. But now you've got this. You've got the sign stealing and literally, like, this guy bought tickets. Y'all, the craziest part, he used his name. Like, he used his actual name when he was buying tickets. That would be like me buying a ticket to, like, Georgia, Tennessee, and going and getting a seat behind the Tennessee bench so I can film the Georgia staff directly so I could then take that back to Hugh Freeze. Whoo! Not Hugh Freeze. We are not taking that back to Hugh Freeze. I'm going to get to Hugh Freeze in a minute. That's why I said that. Sorry for the Floridian slip. I would take that film back to Lane Kiffin. Lane Train, y'all. Lane Train all day. Just reiterating that. And being like, Lane, look at what Kirby's doing. And I noticed that when he does this and he holds up two fingers like a peace sign, he's not saying peace out, Tennessee. He's telling, his two linebackers to do this, that, that would be that. And that is not allowed. That is not allowed. Now, if Lane sits down and picks up on things on film, just like any other coach would have access to, and he sees Kirby doing the two fingers like a peace sign up and the two linebackers going out a certain way, that's one thing. That's totally fine. That's just normal gamesmanship. But this man literally had a concerted effort to go to games, and not just Big Ten games. Like, he was going to like outside conferences for like playoffs and stuff. And again, though, like I said, using his own name to purchase the tickets. So like, I believe TCU has his name, Wisconsin, Ohio State, like all of these teams have his name now. It's so crazy. So that's one thing that's happening. So, okay, great. You're already trying to get the NCAA off your back because of the COVID dead period stuff, but now you've just invited them back in. And actually, I just saw tonight on ESPN that it has been reported that the NCAA has sent enforcement staff to the University of Michigan this week to look into the sign stealing probe that is going on. That information was given to ESPN today, and it's just like less than a week after the investigation was, formally launched. The Big Ten did confirm last week that the NCAA was investigating that. The other weird thing about all of this is it's not like this guy makes like a ton of money. Like when you think about college football, like he's making like $55,000 a year, which is what ESPN reported on. But where it does get really weird is there are text messages from acquaintances of his going back years that he basically admitted to what he was doing. He also said that he is friends with Mr. Harbaugh's son, Little Harbaugh, as I will refer to him as. And at one point, Little Harbaugh sent him a Venmo. All right, so here's the thing, and I laughed at this when I read that, but a Venmo could have been for anything, right? Like they're out at lunch as, analyst, staff member, whatever, or I don't know, they're just friends who work on the same staff, and Little Harbaugh forgets his wallet, so Stallion says, cool, I'll pay for it, and Little Harbaugh says, awesome, I'll Venmo you back. That could have literally been it. But now that you have this, we all have to immediately like jump to assumptions, right? So I laughed at the fact that like someone went through his Venmo feed. Y'all, like someone went through his Venmo feed. But I mean, welcome to 2023. Y'all, there's a private button on Venmo. I'm not saying do anything illegal or against the rules, but there's a private button. Click that. People won't be able to see who you're paying or what it's for or anything. You can do that. So, I mean, because trust me, the NCAA and law enforcement are going to go ahead and like dig into that. Like there will be subpoenas, I have no doubt. But yeah, there's all kinds of weird things. He also apparently has some kind of manifesto that he called it that's anywhere from 500 to 600 pages in length that he works on every single day, according to this text message that an acquaintance of his turned over. And it's in a Google Drive, and it's basically his plan for Michigan moving forward and how he's going to run the program. Look, I am Ole Miss obsessed. I think y'all figured that out by now. I am not 500 to 600 pages obsessed as to how I think I could run their program or how I want to run the program or, like, hey, Keith, I think you got to go because I think, like, no, y'all, like, that's obsessive. Like, this is like that weird obsessive, but towards a specific team instead of like a specific person. Like, I feel like this is going to be a new Netflix series at some point. Once we know like what actually happened, like this will be a Netflix series. Mark my words. And it's going to be more than just an Untold. It's going to be way more than a 30 for 30 on ESPN. This is going to be a whole thing, like the Anna Delvey thing. Like this is kind of what I'm expecting out of that. So Michigan, though, I'm not done with y'all. Not only is the NCAA there, but the FBI is now probing, Y'all, you can't make this up. The FBI has joined the University of Michigan Police Department's investigation of former Wolverines assistant football coach Matt Weiss, who was fired in January following a report of unauthorized computer access crimes at the school's football building. If you need to, pause, rewind 20 seconds, and listen to what I just read again. So, if Harbaugh and everybody at Michigan thought the NCAA being back on campus for the sign stealing probe was pretty bad, no, they literally now have the FBI there for something completely different, for another assistant. You can't make this shit up, y'all. You cannot make this shit up. That's why I said this is going to be like a whole like saga. It's going to be more than just like one little off storytelling thing. So I'm interested to see what goes on with this, because I do remember reading about this when it did happen, and I was like, well, they didn't say that it was like, child pornography or anything like that. It was just fraudulent activity involving someone accessing accounts without authorization. And I actually think, per the story on ESPN.com again today, someone accessing university email accounts without authorization. So was he like dating a student or another faculty or staff member and was like hacking into their email accounts? I don't know. But at least we didn't hack into his Venmo account and like say, oh, well, he gave, $20 on this day to this person. So I do think that was kind of funny. And ironic that on the day that it's reported that the NCAA is back in Ann Arbor, so is the FBI. So I have a feeling this isn't the last we're going to hear about Michigan. I do think it also is something that does need to be talked about, because if Michigan does go on somehow and end up winning the national championship, y'all, none of them better win the Heisman. Nothing. And there better be so many asterisks, whatever. There better be a lot of footnotes as to all the poo-poo that went down in Ann Arbor and why it is a controversial thing. So, selection committee, this is on y'all. Y'all better be paying attention to this, because this could blow up in your face. This would make Pete Rose betting on games seem like monopoly money was being used. Like, this could be really, really big. So I think this is going to be one of those things that we definitely have to pay attention to. So, but I'm tired of talking about them now. I do kind of want to get back to, I kind of want to go a little bit into some games this week for football. And I'm going to start with my Rebels. We've got Vanderbilt. Look, I am an Ole Miss fan. I have watched Vanderbilt beat us in years when I never thought they should have and they shouldn't have. I have also thought that Vanderbilt should have beat us, and somehow we didn't. Looking 2014, like the James Franklin years at Vanderbilt, that kind of stuff. So Vanderbilt always plays us tough. I am very sad because since the SEC is going to no West and East divisions next year, this will be the last time that we get to play Vanderbilt every year. I saw it referred to as the Khaki Bowl today, and I thought that was really funny. So I guess farewell to my beloved Khaki Bowl. I always love going to Vanderbilt football games in Nashville. They're a lot of fun. It's a smaller stadium, but it usually ends up holding more Ole Miss fans. I think, I kind of talked about this last week with their wonderful athletic director, Dr. Candace. I think they're going to turn the page. And so I am sad that we're not going to kind of be there to play them every single year. But I think this is going to be a good test for us. Do we drop off? Do we kind of have that like looking past them? We're not going to be able to, right? We've got Texas A&M on the 4th, but I don't think we're going to be able to look past Vandy. They will come out and they will be out for blood. So I'm excited for this game. I'm excited to see Jackson. I'm excited to see Quinshon build on some of the momentum that he had coming out of last week's game. I'm excited to see Cade in that tight end slot. Man, he's going to be such a great target for Jackson. I'm excited for that as well. Also, I want to see the big man Micah Pettis jump up and grab his ankles in celebration with Quinshon again. Like, that's a big man. getting a lot of air. So I just want to see that, and I want to see it in the end zone that I sit in. So Micah, if somehow you ever do hear this, just do it for me, okay? Thanks. A couple of other cool matchups this week that I'm looking forward to. Strangely, well, I don't know that I can say I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a very interesting game. It's going to be one to watch for the SEC West as we close out the remainder of the season, and that's Mississippi State and Auburn. Hugh Freeze, if he had decided to coach the entire game like they did on that last drive against Ole Miss, I would not be sitting here talking to you about the fact that we went into Auburn at night and won. I really honestly believe that it would have been a very, very different story. But I'm glad he didn't. I'm glad they didn't, and we still came out with the win. Woo! But I do think that it's going to be an interesting game because, State Arkansas, 7-3. That was the final score, y'all. State won. I don't know that you'll see as much defense in this game. I do think both teams are going to score, but I'm interested to see if Auburn can finally take some of the stuff that they've been working on. They woke up a little bit more last week than they had the week before against LSU. But I think, I think this may be the game where they wake up. I am kind of interested to see, does State wake up at all? I don't know. But like I said, I think this is kind of the game that's going to have a lot of bearing on like what could happen in the SEC West, because you are still going to have Alabama, Auburn. You are going to have Ole Miss, Mississippi State all the last weekend of the regular season. I mean, there's still some major implications. And so this will be a good, I think, gauge for both Ole Miss and Alabama fans to see what is Mississippi State looking like at this point in the season. What is Auburn looking like, and kind of what do we have to look forward to. So interesting game there. I want to talk about James Madison. Y'all, they're 7-0. And they're hosting Old Dominion this weekend. It's going to be a 6 o'clock game. It's a 7 o'clock game on ESPNU. And I think it's going to be a good one. I'm very excited for James Madison. They finally cracked the top 25 this weekend. So go y'all. That's going to be, I wanted them to keep going. I do. I just want them to stay undefeated. I think it's a great story. Duke Louisville's going to be a really good game. Right now, Louisville's a 4.5-point favorite. I kind of want to see what Duke's going to do. I really do. So that'll be a good mid-afternoon game, 2:30 on ESPN. And then we have the one that nobody saw coming last week. You have UNC, who lost to Virginia. Like, ooh, did anybody see that one coming? Because I didn't. So I think that UNC's got a big test this week. Georgia Tech can be scary. You can't overlook Georgia Tech, and it's at Georgia Tech. So, does UNC bounce back? I hope they do. I think they do. I really do. I think they do. But yeah, starting to get into a lot of good football. Oregon, Utah, right? Like, Utah made a good statement. Oregon is a 6.5-point favorite. It's at Utah. I remember the way that Utah crowd was rocking against Florida that first game of the season. So if that crowd does the same, I don't know that it'll be as close as 6.5 points in Oregon's favor. I don't know. Don't worry, I did not pick that one on the blog this week, so you don't have to worry about that since I can't figure out what I think is going to happen there. But I do just have this weird, sneaky feeling that Oregon may not cover. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Yeah, I think that's all I got for college football. I want to get to something else that I haven't really talked about, which is the NBA, but it did just start this week. So, I've heard a lot about James Harden in the offseason. He wanted to be traded to the LA Clippers in the offseason. The 76ers basically wouldn't do it. It was just a whole thing. So he's apparently now returned to them, but he isn't playing tonight against the Milwaukee Bucks. It is their opening night. It's also a national television game. And, in the NBA over the past couple of years, you've heard about players sitting during nationally televised games, and it's not good for the sport and all of that. And so there is now a new rule in place that is actually meant, the NBA put it in place, and it's supposed to help with increasing star players' availability for national television games, right? Like, hey, y'all, it's all about the money. If LeBron's not playing and it's your Christmas Day noon game, that's bad. That's very, very bad. He does not need to be sitting on the bench. He needs to be out there playing. That's what people tune in to see. So I think, not letting James Harden play tonight is going to be another fun story to kind of follow. And fun story isn't like, I'm going to get my popcorn, because he said he wanted to go and he wanted to travel. And then the 76ers said, no, stay at home. And he was like, what? So the team is calling it a personal matter. They kept him in Philadelphia after he returned to them following 10 days away with what they had called a personal matter. They believe he could get himself into game shape more efficiently by remaining at the team's practice facility to work with the Sixers development coaches and medical staff. How do y'all not know what kind of shape he's in? Like, I mean, I get it, right? Like, obviously the relationship there isn't good, but he did play in a preseason scrimmage. And granted, it was October 7th, so it was a few weeks ago, almost 3 weeks ago. But I just am like, what the heck, y'all? And I mean, I think the other thing too is that the Clippers have finally kind of bowed out of trade talks with them. So yeah, this could be, I believe, the first time that the NBA could utilize this rule and fine a team. And I believe what I read was that the first fine would be $100,000 and then penalties would increase. And so it is, I mean, they're playing tonight and the NBA has already come out and said, oh, we're investigating as to whether or not they violated the new player participation policy. So look, good on you, NBA, for, if this is the new rule and this is the standard, like, you got to nip that in the bud immediately. Obviously, Mark Emmert is not working for the NBA, but I digress. All right. Whew. That's a whole lot. I've covered a whole lot. And now I'm going to take it on back just a little bit for this week's Don't Flinch. And I think this episode was a little hard for me because I didn't want to go into my trip to New York in such detail away from sports. But this week, Tasha Butts lost her 2-year battle with breast cancer. She was the Georgetown women's basketball coach. She was 41 years old. That's hard. Y'all, she's 41. Like, that's about 3 years older than me, maybe a little less. And she's gone. And so when the news broke on Monday that she had passed away, I love college women's basketball. I love Coach Yo at Ole Miss. And one of the things that Coach Yo was tweeting about is, don't wait. Tell the people in your life how you feel about them. You never know. And I remember too, like when Tasha stepped away last month, because her disease was progressing, we were all Tasha strong, and, Ole Miss was behind her. I even tweeted a couple of things like, hey, from one survivor to another, like, we're here. Rebel Nation has you forever. Even if you never coached or played here, like, that's fine. We're all Tasha strong at this point. And just to see too that, like, Coach Yo, she's not much older than Tasha and she has two babies, and I know they're way more grown than any of us would probably like to admit, but they're still babies and they're still her kids, and there's a lot of life to still be lived. And it's so hard. It's so hard to see someone so young with so much potential and such an incredible impact on people leave before what should be their time. So, in this week's Don't Flinch, because one day you'll be 38 years old and going to your first New York Giants game, a lifelong dream. And then the next day you'll blink and you'll be 68. And will you be able to look at the people around you and tell them that you lived your life and you did the things you wanted to do while you had the chance? And did you tell them how much they meant to you and how much of an impact they had while they were by your side while you were doing those things? So don't flinch. Do it while you can. Yeah, so hug your loved ones, hug your babies, tell the people that you care about them, and just realize that it can all be gone tomorrow. Oh, okay. And the streak of crying is still alive and well. So, John Reed, just take note of that. So, got a great couple of weeks coming up for you on the podcast. We're going to have a really special guest that I'm so excited about. I will give you a hint. It is a former Ole Miss football player. He is doing amazing things in the community, and talk about having a great support system around him. He does. And so I'm hoping to have him on to talk a little bit about what he's up to and the impact on the community that he is still trying to make, and how he wants to continue to give back and let his life and his actions be his message. Also may have a cool women's coach or two coming up. So it's going to be a little sporadic, probably, in terms of guests as we come up through the holiday season. But I promise you, I will continue to come on here, give my takes on things, hopefully make it a little entertaining at the same time. Definitely probably not as entertaining instead of singing H to the OV, singing H to the OG. Abigail, I'm looking at you. It was great, though. And no one would have ever known unless they were sitting right next to you. But, it's going to be cool over the next few weeks, just kind of wrapping up the college football season. Definitely, having the World Series getting into full swing, which we didn't even get into that today. So definitely going to spend some time on that, definitely next week. My 10-year wedding anniversary is coming up next week too. So going to talk a couple of things about that and some fun sports moments that have happened throughout our marriage. And yeah, and then before you know it, it's going to be Thanksgiving, which is my favorite holiday. So not because of why, like what we did in history was bad, very, very, very bad. But I do just like a day to eat some of my favorite foods and watch football. So, yeah. So hopefully over the next few weeks, you'll stay tuned. One thing I do want to talk about too before I get off here for the night is what we're seeing in our world outside of sports. What we're seeing in the conflict with Israel and Hamas is absolutely atrocious. I don't care what side you are on. The mutilation and killing of children is grotesque. It is beyond awful. And just, I hope it stops. I hope it stops. I hope that people will look at each other and realize that's a person. We haven't been able to do it really in the entire history of mankind, but when it comes to babies and kids, y'all, that's just no. So, just condemning that. I felt the need to say that. I've kind of been quiet on it. I didn't really know what to say, but yeah, it's absolutely unacceptable. Also, there is something happening in my hometown right now. Steve Perkins, a black man, was shot by police officers multiple times in his driveway. In the early morning, police did not announce themselves. They did not have their lights on. And before they could even tell him to fully get on the ground, before the word ground came out of their mouths, they put 7 bullets in him and left his baby without a father, and his wife without a husband, and his neighbor with about 8 bullet holes in his house and no apology from the city. So I don't know what is going to happen in my hometown. You never think it's going to happen in your hometown, but it's currently happening in mine, and it's absolutely senseless. It could have absolutely been prevented, and I am here to say that I am so very utterly disgusted with the leadership in my hometown right now, and it is time for people to be held accountable. It has been a couple of weeks now, and we want answers. We want answers. End of story. Also, finally, the mass killings in Maine. As I'm recording this, I believe the suspect is still at large, but going into a bowling alley on youth night and killing people, going into a sports bar and grill and killing people, y'all, this world is insane. And we can't just continue to sit by and go, well, bad shit's going to happen. No, we can change it. It's never going to be perfect, but we can do something to change it. And so I just send my thoughts and prayers and energy out into the world that people will come around and realize that the things that they are targeting that are in human forms are not just human forms. That is an actual human. That's a person. And that, maybe we are a lot more alike than people want to realize. Maybe our differences aren't as big as we perceive. And maybe a little bit of grace would go a really long way. So, yeah, on that note, that's been this week's episode. As always, you can find us on thealabamatake.com. You can find us wherever you find your podcast, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, you name it, we're there. Leave a 5-star review. Share it with your friends and family. You can share it on Facebook by searching for and then stare down, one word. You can find us on Twitter at the Stare Down Pod. You can find us on Instagram at the Stare Down _podcast. You can also send us an email to the staredownpod@gmail.com. You can leave comments on the blog post. You can send an email. You can leave messages, whatever, on any of those platforms to tell us about anything you want to hear me talk about. If there's anything you like, you don't like, I'm here for it. But on that note, it's time to sit back, relax, grab a drink or two, and listen to the Stare Down. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Love those that you love. Tell them you love them. Give them big hugs. And hotty toddy, y'all. Let's go take care of those doors. Until next week, have a good one. Bye.